Hi everyone, Vincent here, and I've got a very special guest for today's podcast. This person has been speaking with me via my audio coaching service now for a number of months, and the fantastic news is that he has got his ex back. He's now back in a relationship, a brand new relationship with his ex, who, unfortunately for this person, my client, he was dumped. So this person you're about to hear was the dumpee. He's now back with his ex, and he is going to explain to you his story. So please, everybody, welcome Tony to the line. Hi, Tony. Thank you so much for saying that you would do this. You know, Tony is obviously aware that this has been recorded and is going to be a podcast. So thank you, Tony, for coming on today's podcast.
Yeah, no problem, Vincent. Glad I can be of help and tell my story to everyone.
It's so kind of you to do so, and I'm sure everybody will take a lot from it. So if you don't mind, Tony, please explain to us your story, what happened towards the end of your relationship and what took place when this breakup sadly happened.
Sure. So I was with my partner before when they were my ex. I was with them for about almost shy of 6 years. And we had gone out on a date, and as the date ended, she had basically told me that she was not feeling in love with me and she had wanted to break up with me. And I, like many dumpees, felt blindsided by it and felt that I did not see this coming. And I kind of did the typical thing. I love it. I begged. I asked her to give me a second chance. I was wondering, we can fix things. Why didn't you communicate with me and tell me these things? And at the end of the day, my pleas fell on deaf ears, and she finalized and basically broke up with me.
And that must have been obviously heartbreaking for you, Tony, when it took place. In the initial aftermath of your breakup, what actually happened? So once you kind of got home and kind of really processed that your relationship was over, how did you deal with it initially in those first few, say, days or weeks?
So actually, in the first day after, I spoke to some friends, and I actually wrote a long, I wouldn't say letter, but just things I want to say, and actually called my ex at that point and asked if I could speak with her. And I met her in person one last time, and I tried to once again convince her, saying how I would change, if she would give me a second chance, I wouldn't let her go, and it still fell on deaf ears. She had made her decision already. And so after that, the few weeks afterwards, I spent time just away trying to figure out what I do, wallowing in my own sorrow about the breakup, kind of wondering where did I mess up? How could she do this to me? I'm not sure where to go from here. And so once from that, I started listening to Get Your Ex Back coaches on YouTube. And that's actually how I stumbled upon your channel. And I started listening to your playlist, especially with the no contact rule that you promote, as well as your various playlists with the dumper experience and the dumpee experience. And those videos really helped me to kind of get a better understanding of things, of not only where my dumper was coming from, but how I was feeling and what would be the road to recovery for me.
That's so good to hear, Tony, that you were looking for the support, because sometimes people try to take this journey on their own. And like anything in life, if we do something on our own without support from others who have perhaps been through this or have experience in the topics, it's going to be a tougher journey. So you at least had the foresight to almost kind of look for the support. I'm very appreciative that you found my channel and you found it helpful and supportive. What was your journey from listening to my podcasts to eventually sending me that email regarding audio coaching?
So initially, when I listened to your videos, I understood about the situations and just your generalized advice for the dumpers dynamic and the dumpee dynamic. But since my situation was that on the weekends, I would still run into my ex at the time, I had to wonder, was this considered I think you've mentioned it before in some of your videos as limited no contact. And since I wasn't really sure as to how to approach this, and that's when I decided to reach out to you and send you an email explaining my situation and asking if you could help me in terms of audio coaching.
Yeah, and for those of you listening at home right now, basically Tony and his partner, or well, we'll say his current partner, fantastically, he's got his ex back, but his ex at the time, they both attended the same, what should we call it, kind of club, Tony? Was that the best way to call it at a weekend?
Yeah, it's a recreational sport. So like a kind of club recreational sport.
So what was happening was Tony was seeing his ex every weekend pretty much, which made things even more challenging for Tony, having to process these feelings and emotions while seeing his ex. And I think it's fair for me to say you were getting very little feedback off her. I mean, I remember, especially during our early calls, there was a lot of discussion about, okay, you know, I'm going to be trying to do A, B, and C, but it doesn't seem to be having any effect on my ex. I remember you saying that type of thing.
Yeah, like such as when you talk about orbiting and not orbiting around your dumper, I was trying to do that in the beginning, and just to kind of cut a little bit like ahead of the story in a sense, when I kind of talked to her about that as when we got back together, she had admitted to me that annoyed her, that I was annoying her by being around her. And so I know that we spoke on our few calls, and I kind of expressed that I couldn't figure out what she was feeling or thinking, and you had told me not to mind read, to just continue doing limited no contact and not interacting with her unless I needed to, just business wise, like something related to the sport. And so with that, I started going to be much more, I will say hi to her if our paths cross and be cool, casual, and carefree and friendly towards her. But I wouldn't try to like go out of my way to make conversation with her as if like I was trying to like get through a back door in a sense to try to get back with her.
Exactly. So Tony's situation was very difficult for him and anybody else who is going through a scenario where they see their ex, whether it is via a job or a club, or maybe you have children together. He was seeing his ex and trying to stay stable-minded, and also thinking in his mind, do I use this as an opportunity to maybe flirt or try to spend extra time with them? Or, as I was suggesting, you know, you've got to focus on your own journey and your own path. If you need to interact, then do. You know, don't run away, don't put your head down, don't make things obvious and awkward. But if you don't actually have to interact, then just do your own thing. And if you cross paths, smile, say hi. But ultimately, you can't use this as an opportunity to try to gravitate towards them, because it's not natural. You know, they are not with you because they want to spend time with you at this point. They're just sharing an experience. And unfortunately, this is a trap many people can fall into. And I think Tony may have been liable to that initially. But we spoke for, and we continue to speak, as you'll learn throughout this podcast. But I mean, how long, Tony, again, kind of almost skipping a little bit throughout the story, how long have we been talking from the initial call to you actually getting your ex back? How many weeks and months has it been?
I reached out to you back in like June, and it's been about 4 months now since I initially reached out with the calls that we've had.
Yeah, it's been what I mean, Tony will probably feel is a long time, or well, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it can feel that way. But in essence, this is fitting in quite nicely almost to the average that I tell people about. The average amount of time a dumper takes to reach out to a dumpee is around 6 months. So if we consider when the breakup took place, and then consider when Tony contacted me and the work that we've been doing together, I believe it comes just over 5 months. Is that about right, Tony?
Yes, it was just about 5.5 months.
So that is, you know, it's almost an absolute perfect fit for the average. Now, not all of you will fit into this. I mean, it's important to say, like I always do, there is no 100% guaranteed way to get your ex back. And sadly, not all of you will. But those of you who do, it's not necessarily going to be bang on this average, but this is the average. Around 6 months, if you do everything right, is the average. Now, when I say do everything right, I mean putting in the work. And my gosh, did Tony put in the work? I mean, Tony, would you like to speak about your feelings and experiences like during our calls and the journey you went on during all of that time?
Sure. So like during the time I was broken up and with the calls that I had with you, I would live new experiences, such as I went on trips by myself. I stayed at a hotel and kind of spent time away from where I normally live. And I also did events where people would invite me out. I would go. I wouldn't just stay home. I actually went to my first baseball game in person that I had never been to. And that was a great experience for me. Not only that, I decided to pick up a new hobby in learning how to play the acoustic guitar. And even though I'm not the greatest at it and I'm still learning, it was just something to get out of my comfort zone, to do something that I've always wanted to. As well as I also started doing a lot more walks for my own health and losing weight to become much more fit, which aligned with my own personal goals, as well as I started listening to a lot of more audiobooks just to give myself learning new information and always learning something new every day and challenging myself, like things that you told me on our calls. Always constantly challenge myself to do something.
And what Tony has proven here is that if you put in the work, you increase your chances. Like, nothing can be guaranteed, but Tony put himself into such an excellent position because he really truly did become a version 2.0 of himself. Now, although Tony just eloquently said everything that he changed and improved upon, and it may have sounded like quite easy and just off the cuff that he said this was challenging because not only is he putting himself out of his comfort zone, not only is he learning new skills, but he's doing it with often very little feedback that it is quote unquote working. So one of the hardest things for a Dumpee is to stay motivated. Tony is one of the most motivated people that I've spoke with, but even he, would sometimes call me, or shall I say when I would call him for our calls, and sometimes he would be feeling low. And, I would find my job in that instance to motivate him and to keep him going. I mean, do you remember, Tony, any kind of periods where you did feel low energy and you did feel unmotivated?
Yeah, so there would be days, especially nearing the day of the breakup that happened, as you kind of the day, the time, what I was doing that day. And so whenever those days would approach during the months, my mind would kind of sink into that again. I would feel low energy. I wouldn't want to do work. There would be points where I would have these intrusive thoughts like, why am I doing this? She's never coming back. And having to just talk to you and having you motivate me to be like, hey, keep going. It's like become a better version, like learn to be okay by yourself and kind of getting that motivation to be like, yeah, you know what? I'm doing this for me. I'm not doing this for her.
Exactly. And that's such a good point that Tony brings up, because one of the things that I really truly promote is doing it for you, because it is the concept that if you don't get your ex back, if you become a version 2.0 of yourself, you can and will find somebody even better. So I couldn't promise Tony he would get his ex back. What I could say is you're putting yourself in an excellent position. Like, even though she is not showing specific signs of noticing your improvements, I was saying, look, she clearly is going to be noticing them. Now, even though you might be listening to this and thinking, well, I don't see my ex every week, there are different ways that they can find out about your improvements. Every situation is unique and different, and that is why audio coaching is better than my podcasts, which have to be generalized. I mean, even just the concept of my version of a no contact rule in itself is going to grow intrigue in your ex's mind. So don't feel like, well, okay, Tony saw his ex every week, he had an advantage. If anything, it was harder, because every single week he had to make sure he didn't look bitter, upset, angry. He had to do all of these things whilst also not actively chasing her. So, your situation will be different to Tony's, and that is why maybe speaking with me one-on-one could be something which helps you. And if you are interested in audio coaching, check out my website, www.dateme.tips, for more details. But going back to what I was just saying, Tony is somebody who worked his hardest, became a version 2.0, and I was saying to him, look, if you don't get your ex back, you're going to attract somebody even better, because you are now a better, more attractive person than you were when you got your ex. So therefore, the pool of people you can attract is larger, and you will find somebody. So you've got to do it for you. So even when Tony was feeling low, I would motivate him. My coaching is on various different angles. It's not just breakup recovery. It's not just strategies to try to get an ex back. It's not just self-improvement. It's all of those elements and more. And as me and Tony spoke once a week, for the number of months that we was kind of getting through, I was more and more confident that he was going to make a breakthrough, because the improvements he was making was so clear, was so profound. I just had the faith, the belief, whatever you want to say, that he was going to be somebody who hit gold sooner or later. And, would you like to explain, Tony, what actually happened around the magic period of time where, it finally happened?
Yeah, so it was about, I would say, almost 3 weeks back at this point, where I was just casually at a medical facility having a doctor's appointment, and I was waiting. My phone started ringing, and I looked at it. It was my ex calling me. And I know you talk about how sometimes when you feel better, your dumper kind of reaches out. I just recall that day where I woke up saying, you know what? I'm going to be okay. I will be fine. And I felt really good that day. And magically enough, or who knows how the universe works, my ex reached out to me, and I picked up nonchalantly. I kind of was just like, hey, what's going on? What's up? And she kind of asked if I would be free to meet with her and speak. And I said, sure. Where do you want to meet? What time? And we named a place and time. And we met actually in person later that evening. And from there, she kind of talked to me and had basically expressed to me that she would like to try again, that she wanted to be in a relationship again. I told her, while I would like that, I wanted to take things slow, one step at a time, to just kind of get back into things. But I did not expect that call at all. It just kind of blew me back. And I think I spoke with you just as well, Vincent. When she called, I kind of didn't even realize who it was that was calling, and maybe not until 10, 15 minutes later, when I was out of the medical office, did I actually realize that had happened, that I had gotten contact from my ex.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that whereas some of Tony's elements really fit into the average of what happens when somebody gets their ex back, there are a couple of points which are not the average. So firstly, the most common way a dumper will reach out to their dumpee is via messaging. Okay. Whereas Tony was called, that is a less likely option. Not only that, his communication stage was all over, within one day. Within one day, he was already arranging to meet. And that is unusual. Most people go through a communication stage which can span days, if not weeks. So there are a couple of elements of Tony's story which are unique to him, you might say, and are not the average. But again, that's where the audio coaching can come in help, because basically me and Tony was, ironically speaking, I believe it was the day after or very close by to when this was all happening. I remember getting an email with an update. I was so excited, and we was able to really kind of look into the next steps to be taken, because Tony had almost gone straight through the communication stage to the meeting stage. Now at the meeting stage, you still haven't got your ex back. So as Tony mentioned, this was about 3 weeks ago, but it was only today during our audio coaching call, but Tony said to me, yes, I've now got my ex back. So would you like to explain, Tony, what's kind of been going on in the last few weeks between you actually meeting and to you now officially kind of saying, we are back together?
Sure. So after that initial meetup, I arranged with her saying that, hey, I would like to go out with her on a date. I made it clear a date and said I will contact, it was on a Thursday that I would meet with her, given our scheduling, and told her I would call her on Monday to kind of hammer out the details. And so at that point, I didn't actually talk to her again until Monday, which is kind of interesting because she called me first on Monday and expressed a bit of anxiousness as to why I had not called her yet. And I think you and I spoke about this, and I was kind of taken aback by it. And I think you were explaining that this was kind of the power shift dynamic that you speak about in some of your videos. And so from there, we've been taking our time slowly, going on dates every few days. Everyone's, I guess, schedule is different. I would call her after a certain point, and we would speak on a nightly basis. And eventually, we did get to the point where she started telling her mother, I am with Tony again. And her mother had kind of asked, so what are you? And she wasn't sure either. And she expressed that to me on a phone call. And instead of kind of feeling anxious and answering there and there, I remained calm. And I met with her just this past Sunday and basically spoke to her and told her, like, I would like to be in a relationship again with her. and she was open to that. And so that's when we officially got back together.
And that is so fantastic to hear. And literally, like I just said, it was only earlier today, but Tommy, we are now officially back together. And now in our audio coaching course, we are moving into what you might call the aftercare, because Tony has decided he would like to continue talking to try to grow and maintain this connection. You see, my audio coaching is not just about trying to get an ex back. It covers lots of different possibilities and angles. I speak to some couples who are still together and never split up, proper relationship coaching. I also help people who are going through a breakup but don't want their ex back. Obviously, in Tony's instance, he wanted to try to get his ex back. And then there is also, like I said, the aftercare of trying to help maintain and grow a brand new relationship. And there's also general life coaching. So if you feel that you need support in any of these perspectives, please check out my website, www.dateme.tips, for more details on my audio coaching service. I really want to thank Tony, because most dumpees who get their ex back, they just go off into the sunset. And quite understandably, they don't want any more breakup videos, podcasts, and they certainly want to keep their privacy. Tony is very unique, where he actually suggested to me, would you like to record my story? I think it could help people. And I said, absolutely. Because there are so few people, to the point of, I think Tony is the first that I can even recall off the top of my head, Dumpee, who's got his ex back, who actually wanted to record their story and go on a podcast. Sometimes I have people that come into my live streams and they might kindly say a few words, a few sentences, but basically Tony's gone above and beyond what you need to do. Some people would just say, I've got my ex back, goodbye, and he is really trying to give back to the community and give you all the hope that even if you don't get your ex back, you can find a brighter day. Because I think it's important probably to end on the point, Tony, that if you hadn't have got your ex back, I believe you was on the path to greater happiness anyway. But please, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I mean, do you think you was on a trajectory of happiness either way?
Oh yeah, I was knowing that even though the holidays would be a bit rough and I was going to do the preparations to plan for that, I was going to give myself a year from the breakup, so a year when it happened, and then start dating again and knowing that I was ready, but making the preparations to continue growing. And even though I have my ex back now, the one thing that sticks with me from your videos and lessons is I'm never going to stop growing. So even though I've reached a version 2.0, I want to keep growing to be a version 3.0 or 4.0 and just keep growing and building on that. And hopefully continue to have my, not my ex anymore, but my partner with me by my side.
And what a beautiful sentiment, to hear and to listen to, is that Tony fully believed that if he got to that year point where he hadn't got his ex back, he was going to have the confidence to proceed and find happiness in a different direction. And that is why we all have hope. And that is why it is win-win, because if you don't get your ex back, you can and will find somebody even better. And I hope today you've enjoyed Tony's story and it's given you that motivational boost. Please let me know in the YouTube comments how you feel about listening to this story. Give some messages to Tony. I'm sure he will be reading the comments with interest. I truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank Tony for doing this, because like I said, the vast majority of dumpees would not want to do this, and that's nothing against them, but it's just so helpful when somebody like Tony actually wants to do this, because it's quite brave and he's doing it for the community. So thank you, Tony. Thank you so much.
Yeah, not at all. I hope people are able to listen to the story and maintain hope and understand that, yes, the grind is difficult, but keep at it. And there is a brighter future ahead for you, no matter what, even if it's with or without your ex, like Vincent always says.
Well, thank you again, Tony, and I truly wish you the best of luck with this new relationship. But, we are still speaking via audio coaching and email. So, I'm looking forward to the next days, weeks and months as you move forward into a new, happier, exciting chapter in your life where you, Tony, have got your ex back.
Thank you, Vincent. And I always look forward to our calls, and it's always been helpful with me to deal with both the ups and downs, and I hope to continue to rise as the time goes on.
Thank you, Tony. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.